Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, today we're in the world of business growth, business exit. And we've got a founder with us who did sell his business for an obscene amount of money, so knows all about this.
Today our guest is Alexis Sikorsky. Alexis, welcome to the next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've got a particular accent. I think I know where it's from, but I guess horribly on these things. But it sounds a bit Italian. But where are you from originally?
Not far, actually. The accent is French, but I'm Swiss, so
Oh, I see.
don't
Okay.
blame me for anything happening in the World Cup.
No. It's definitely not your fault. But we're gonna scoot right by because as we record this, England are no longer in the World Cup. But so it gives you an idea, right? Okay. So when it comes to your business and the things that you do, Alexis, as Kevin mentioned, it's about one part of it is about exit, and I think for me that's one of the most fascinating things. Um, can you give us an idea of what part of your business really pumps you? What's the thing that says I'm having a good day today because I'm doing this?
It's a mix of two different things. One is talking with founders. I have an absolute fascination on these weird people that we founders are, like totally inadapted to the actual world and living in our weird own universe. So every time I spend with a founder, whether it's a woman from Northern England launching a hydration drink company, or it's pharmacist in London building clinics, or it's a IT software company in Little Rock, Arkansas that I'm currently working with. Have a fascination with founders and also have a very sweet spot for universe I don't understand because I'm strongly believe that common sense and a little bit of experience is actually better than having decades of market knowledge, and especially in a world where market change every 5 minutes. So
We were talking earlier about not scripting this podcast, and Kevin made the point that it's one of the reasons for doing this is that it keeps both of us curious. And I suspect that rang a bell with you because it seems to me that you're curious and the kinds of diversity of clients that you've got currently, and you've had other clients in the past, that sort of sense of curiosity about them and what they're about to do or what you're going to be able to help them do, that seems to get your engines revving. Is that true?
well, yes, and it's actually funny because one of the things I do is to encourage founders to actually make plans.
Ah,
But on the other hand, I keep telling man make plans and God laughs. So it's all about making plans and be sure you can pivot from your plan. And
sure.
yeah, it's 100% curiosity. Like a few months ago, I was hired by a company that does a new green friendly, save the planet, adjuvant for asphalt. So I literally worked in this company having no idea what asphalt was. And now I'm considering myself a quasi-expert on
Yeah,
asphalt. So that's the kind of stuff that really
yeah,
rocked my boat. So when I get the phone call like, oh, it's a fintech company, I like, oh no, another one of these.
yeah,
Because, I can do that in my sleep. So it's not where
yeah.
the fun lies.
No, I understand that, but you basically it's not. So it sounds a bit like you're helping people at the maybe not quite the beginning, but near the beginning of their journey. But you're also helping people to figure out when to exit that particular part of their life.
So unless there is an exception and a proper love story with a founder, which happens, I
Yeah,
do not help people at the beginning of their journey.
yeah,
The main reason is I don't work much anymore. I will not have 16 hours a day because that's the reason I sold my company, right? Also, I
yeah,
have two young kids, so I don't want that anymore. So my day only have as many hours, right? And I try to work where I really bring value.
Yeah.
And like startups is all about financing and like rounds, and that's not where my value lies, to be
Yeah.
honest. So
Okay.
um my sweet spot is well, it's interesting. My sweet spot is when the founder gets stuck.
Mm.
And that happens. I think so. And that's going to be the topic of my second book. At the moment, I'm really strongly validating the hypothesis with a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
I'm feeling there is a point where the founder gets stuck and it's somewhere between 5 and 20 million pounds, right? It's not at 1 million and it's not at 50 million.
Yeah.
And where basically, the founder was a fantastic asset to that point and it started becoming a liability.
Yeah.
And you get to that loop where actually the harder you work, the less your business is worth.
Yeah.
Because, yeah,
Yeah. I'm just looking at the book. I mean, the first book that you've got, and the one that you haven't written the second book yet, but basically the first one is all about cashing out. That's the title of the book, Cashing
yeah.
Out. So at, when you're thinking about the kind of clients that you're helping and actually helping vicariously through the book, what you're actually doing is you're helping people understand that they're probably getting in their own way, and it's time to adopt a different strategy for a period, maybe 2 or 3 years, which basically means they're moving out of the situation that they're in. The company might keep going, but somebody else might come along to run it. So is that the essence of cashing out?
The essence of cashing out is basically build your business to sell it, even if you never intend to. That's like a big thing. Like, oh no, but I'm not interested because I never sell my business.
No.
I don't care. Like every things that make you a high value is also what makes you an efficient company. So that's like the essence behind cashing out. Cashing out has a history, right? Like every book, it comes from a moment in life where you think you can bring value by writing a book. So writing a business book is a very peculiar task. Um, I have a scoop for your listener. You're not going to get rich writing a business book.
I think they might
You're,
know that.
yeah,
Yeah, we've all figured that one out.
If they're
yeah.
listening to this podcast, and they definitely know that. But no. Now that's a really good point. And now cashing out, is it actually available for purchase right now? So I think
Yes,
it
yes,
was.
it is.
So and did it launch this year then?
It was last year.
Last year.
Last
Okay,
year.
fine.
Last
Okay.
year. The history behind the book is actually after I sold my company and I literally retired at age 50 and 1 month, which pisses me off because of a freaking lawyer in Zurich. I couldn't retire before my 50th, which was my goal. But anyway, I retired and I properly retired for 3 years. I use that to have my big midlife crisis, like new wife, new country, new kids, like a proper like midlife
Nice.
crisis. So I
Ah,
was pretty
genuine
happy.
midlife life crisis in the sports car.
I don't like sports car. I was thinking another way is touring the ashram in India in a sports car or something like that. But I went from new wife and new kids. It's way more fun, actually.
Yeah.
And so I was happy being properly retired. And I started executive MBA in Oxford.
Mhm.
And during this MBA, I was meeting lots of entrepreneurs. I'd say a good third of the cohort in Oxford are entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, and I was like talking to them and like, God, they're making the exact same mistake I made my whole life. And I did a little mind game. I like doing that and say, let's imagine I'm starting New Access. That was my software company. Still in 2000 market condition, but
Yeah.
knowing then what I know now. and do a backward calculation of the total cost of all my mistakes, all my fuck ups, all the bad decision. And I'm not talking playing tomorrow's lottery numbers, like just making better decision. And I put a number of that on that. It's like $50 million and 5 years. That's
Wow.
the total cost. I would have sold 5 years earlier and 50 million more, which is not the end of the world, but it is a significant number in terms of time and money. So I was like, okay, so now I'm talking with these kids. So I call them kids because most of them are way younger than me. And I can help them maybe save $50 million in 5 years. And that's when I started my advisory practice and do that. And then I was like, okay, but like absolute best, I'll be able to help 10 or 20 per year. How can I help more? And that's why I wrote the book.
I get you. So, I mean, if you're, that's a really interesting point. I don't think we've ever covered this, Kevin. This is in, I don't know how many, almost 11 years of podcasting. You've just gone back in time and figured out where you potentially went wrong and ascribed a number to it, which was like music to Kevin's heart. But basically, you've then figured out why that went wrong and what you could have done differently to put it right, and then aggregated that into a whole, and then put that number, 50 million or whatever it is. That is genius. I mean, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I don't think I've come across that.
No, I agree with you. That is genius. Spotting those points where a different decision would have made a difference. And I guess one of the things is that maybe some of those decisions are quite small, but by the time you compound them across 10 years, they become big.
So you know what's interesting? Small or big, that's a question about outcome, right? It's not a question about the actual decision. What's interesting is a lot of things. It's like, what can you generalize about it? Because like, oh, I choose blue and I should have chosen red. That's not going to help you in the future. But I give you a very simple example, right? I was a banking software company. So 100% of my revenue was coming from bank and specifically private banks. The offshore Swiss type of banks, the really, really good people in the world, the people that contribute to the world being a better place. That's another conversation. Yeah. So started the company in 2000, fast forward to 2007, and I'm the king of the world. Literally, the company is making stunning, I don't know, like 11, 12 million revenue, super profitable. I'm spending every penny, hiring the best people in the world, and really have a very high opinion of myself at that point. And like, what can go wrong, right? Like in 2008, in a banking software company, what can go wrong?
And a financial crisis.
Yeah. So basically on a given Tuesday, I lost 75% of my revenue. And that happened. And now I'm looking, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was, because how much money do I have in my bank account? Well, virtually zero, because I've been spending everything. So it's not about anticipating the global financial crisis, because nobody could anticipate that. It's about, okay, so now in every kind of venture I'm in, I demand 9 months of burn rate in the bank account. So that's the lesson learned. The lesson learned is not like, oh, I should have anticipated the global financial crisis. It's I don't know if you're religious people, but in the Bible there is a story of 7 skinny cows eating 7 fat cows, right? And it's as basic as that. I'm so smart, I now discovered something that was in there for 2,000 years. And so it's stuff like that, right? It's not reinventing the wheel. And this has this single decision of not having a war chest has almost cost me my company, almost cost me my health, cost me a lot of friendship, almost cost me my house. And is it a small or a big decision? I don't know, but the impact is big. So that's one of multiple example of
in
thought I
my
did wrong.
in
Yeah.
my earlier career, working in corporates, Alexis, I had this sort of thought, and it's a similar thought, I think, but I'd always have something like, on the basis that I might lose the job that I'm working in. It's a corporate job, and I didn't know better then. I work for myself now, but basically, the corporate job, if it went for all kinds of reasons, and I think I'd had 5 different redundancies during my career, so more than the average, I guess. But at the end of the day, I always said to myself, I will have something like or 6 or more months of money tucked away in the bank. I don't care if it doesn't give me that much interest. It's there. And I'm not reducing that. I'm not going to go on a flash holiday or anything like that. I will with anything else over that, but not that. So that's always the bank. That's the thing that keeps us going if the job goes. And it maybe takes you 5 or 6 months. And that's the logic of it, 5 or 6 months to get into a new role. And that was the logic there. But so I don't see that as a particularly difficult concept, but it's amazing that businesses might not apply the same logic to their own firm.
It's very, very, very few, unless you are an AI genius or you're trying to invent quantum computing.
Yeah.
Very, very few of your ideas require genius. They require basic common sense.
Yeah.
And it's very easy. And I see that every day. The founder who's fantastic at his job, but who has no idea of his numbers.
Yeah.
The guys, when he takes a 3 days holiday, he doesn't even talk to his family because his phone is ringing constant. It's common sense. So my grandfather was a Jewish carpet dealer in Alexandria in Egypt,
Okay.
and then migrated to Switzerland. And he was from time to time importing business knowledge, business wisdom that only a Jewish carpet dealer in Alexandria can give you. And I very, very often go back to this. Like, I have in the corner of my desk some saying from him, like, we are not wealthy enough to buy cheap. That was one of his always saying. We are not wealthy enough to buy cheap. So you're building an extension to your house. And I know because I did that 10 times and I was wrong 10 times. You have the proper established company that cost you £200,000. And then you have the little wheeler dealer company that cost you 150. Go with the big one because you're not wealthy enough to buy cheap. And he was also telling me in trade, because he was a proper tradesman. In trade, there is one principle that you have to never forget is buy cheaper than you sell. Sounds such basic. And how many times in my software company, I priced a project and say, yeah, it's a little bit less than my cost, but I'm going to recoup that later. It's the kind of like, I'm not pretending I'm a business genius. I'm absolutely no Elon Musk. I'm not sending a rocket to Mars, but like proper common sense and experience. And also like, why don't talk to people who've been there and done that? We're available, just like we're not charging money for that. Like when I have that because I give conferences in universities from time to time, especially in the US, because smartly they have entrepreneurship programs. So I go and spend a few hours talking to the kids, and a lot of them talk to me, like message me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I have a particular problem. Can you spend half an hour? Of course, that's what we do, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
very simple common sense.
Yeah.
And that's that simple common sense of sell for more than you buy. That's a theme that's just recurred so much in conversations I've had lately. And it's so obvious when you say it, but the number of times you don't understand your costs. And I think the average person has a tendency to overcost the simple and undercost the complex.
Yeah.
Know your costs. If you've got
Mm.
3 or 4 products, know exactly what those 3 or 4 cost you.
That like it's in specific IT, we have a few like very, very common mistake. Like, and the one I very often use with my client, you have 2 types of project. There are 80% of them that are complicated because they are badly spec'd, badly described, badly run. And you have the 20% that are complicated because they are complicated. Some
Yeah.
stuff in life are just complicated. And this one, they tend to underprice a lot. Like evil is in details, right? How hard can that be? Well, that can be hard because like everybody in banking software knows that anything that relate to client reporting, it's complicated because it's complicated. You're not going to make it simple because it's not. It's because you deal with compliance, you deal with commercial, you deal with the end user. It's complicated. So that's one concept where people underprice. But before underpricing, I'm absolutely amazed by the number of founders who just don't know their numbers. Like I'm still talking to 5 million founders who get their number quarterly. No. It's like flying your plane without a GPS, right? Oh, I got the number for Q1. We are a little bit behind. Too late, my friend. You overshot your airport by 200 miles. You should have done that in January, in February. And then you have the guys who you probably know that in your universe. Get people who get at the end of every month a 50 tabs Excel spreadsheet that's completely unreadable and it takes a CFO to read. So it's end up like every time you have a financial question, you call the CFO, like, what's your EBITDA? What's your revenue? What's your monthly revenue? What it is compared to your budget? What's your CAC? What's your LTV? If you cannot answer that without skipping a beat, then you don't know your numbers. Your CFO knows your number. When I say CFO, I mean usually your cousin who does the accounting. But it's people don't know, and you don't know what you don't know until you need to know it.
Yeah.
Can I pivot this conversation to leaving a company? So basically exiting that company. Now, as a part of your, you have a couple of websites. One, the one that I'm looking at right now is A for Alexis Sikorsky.com. So Sikorsky.com. Now, on that, you've got the challenges I faced and the lessons I'm passing on, and you've got 6 little bullets there. And to be honest with you, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, yeah, I get that. Yeah, I get it. Personally, I get that. And so basically, that lack of money, so without capital or war chest, which we've kind of touched on, revenue and profit, you lack the means to scale up and exit. So that's one of the points there. There's lack of vision, lack of focus, lack of strategy, lack of people, and lack of accountability. Out of all those lack ofs, money, vision, focus, strategy, people, accountability, which is the one that most people get wrong?
Vision. Because everything derives from that.
Because isn't that the thing that entrepreneurs normally bring? Vision.
Yeah. So you have your curve as an entrepreneur, right? You start with vision, then you get into sales, then you get into operations, then you get into client support, then you're into client support, then you're into client support and client support and client support, because life is a bitch, right? And because, now 30% of my revenue depend from this one client. So it's not the lack of initial vision. Entrepreneurs have fantastic initial vision. I actually frame that in two different ways. One is super common, super known. I didn't invent anything. Is you spend too much time in the company and not enough time on the company, right? Super common, still happening 99% of the time. And the other one, which is a little more subtle, but it's the same pretty much, is you confuse what's urgent with what's important. So now you have a lack of vision, not because you get dumber than when you started the company, but because you're swamped. You're swamped in stuff that are urgent, but not that important, that you should delegate. And after that, all the rest, lack of money, lack of people, lack of time, it's all derived from that initial not being able to extract yourself from the day-to-day operations of the company. And I give that for free. It's not something I invented, that genius or anything, but a very simple tool. Super, super simple. And that's a conversation I have with all of my founders. First one is admitting you have a problem, right? It's step number one, admitting you have a problem. So I have this conversation with them and say, okay, I'm a scuba diver. So once a year, I charter a boat with a group of friends and we go diving for 10 days. For 10 days, basically, well, now it's a little less true, but we have no internet or no cell phone reception. So put yourself in that situation, what happens to your company? Except I make it 3 weeks because it's more impactful. You're completely off the grid for 3 weeks. What's happened to your company? So now the founders split in two. You have the one that already know they have a problem. Say, oh yeah, no, that's not going to be good. And you have the one that don't realize yet they have a problem. They'll tell, oh, there'll be no problem. The company will run without me. So my next sentence is, okay, how does the end of the month look? And do you like French Polynesia? I'll send you a ticket. You can live with your family for 3 weeks. The only condition is you leave your cell phone and your computer. And I'm yet to have to buy an actual plane ticket. So that's recognizing you have a problem. And then how to fix it. It's actually super simple. I ask them every day for at least 1 week, ideally 2. You spend 10 minutes before going to bed and you write an Excel spreadsheet of all the tasks you actually did on that particular day. And when you have this list, I do it for a week because there's no such thing as a typical founder's day. So you need more than 1 day. You have that list, and then we're going to identify the task you are uniquely qualified to do, which is not the same as the task you haven't delegated yet, or you don't want to delegate, or you don't have anybody to delegate. I give you an example, Kevin. What we're doing today, we're both uniquely qualified to do. If a Nightscale partner, my company, instead of having 14 people, had 1,400 people, I'd still need to talk to Kevin in the podcast, because if I said you, oh, by the way, my head of marketing is going to do the podcast, you're going to say, fuck you, that's you I want to talk. And same with you. If you said, oh, are you going to be a host in my podcast, but today it's Mary from Client Relation who's going to do the podcast, that's not going to work, right? So we identify, and it's interesting, the bigger the company gets, the smaller this list should become. And if you go to like Extreme, the CEO of a publicly listed company, basically this list of tasks is investors relations, right? The investors, like the hedge fund who own 5% of your company, when you do your quarterly report, they want the CEO. That's something you cannot delegate. So it's very, very simple tool, and that helps with the vision, because it helps with lots of things, but among other things, it helps with the vision.
Yeah. So that's incredibly clear advice. Anybody listening to this is going to be thinking, wow. The thing is, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, I'm not in your catchment, you 5 to 10 million. I'm not there yet. But basically, from my point of view, it still applies to me. Even in a small business, the idea of actually logging the things that you're doing, I do it in a slightly different way, and I can go back and tell you pretty much what I've done for the last God knows how many years, because I do it in a certain way. But at the end of the day, having an understanding of that and then knowing what to do with that, that's what you just brought here. Because if you've got an idea of what you're doing, then the next step is presumably figuring out, well, hold on a minute, what can you do with those tasks to allocate them, to stop doing them, to whatever. And I think, is that part of your process with your clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. And honestly, it's a process I'm not very much needed. You can do that on your own. Yeah. I have a client who has a mastermind online, very, very successful, pretty famous. And we have a weekly conversation, because most of when I intervene in a company, I'm not a guy who produces 50 pages PowerPoint, just have conversation. And part of the conversation at the beginning is always, where should I focus my energy? Should I do more sales? Should I do more client satisfaction? Should I do more? And it's very interesting conversation, because it varies. Like, okay, so last month your sales went really good, but your LTV reduced because you're having too much churn rate. So maybe this month you spend a little more time focusing on client satisfaction, because that will reduce the churn. And next month say, okay, now we reduce the churn, we have to push numbers. So you're going to do more podcast and sales. And so it's always this balance. But first, you need to know what you can delegate. Like, it's no point for me in discussing, I'm going to reduce the pre-sales meeting, the long lunch or the long conversation I have with it. No, that I cannot delegate because that's when I'm needed. But then a lot of stuff I don't do. Like I absolutely suck at admin. I'm terrible. I forget. So I don't do that at all because I know I'm not good at it. So number two co-founder was an admin person. She's fantastic, by the way. I love her. And she does admin, HR, everything that I don't do. So
I saw that HR in a profile and I thought, oh my God. Because it's one of those things with me. I'm fine HR. I had an old Cambridge Blue who was a contact at a company that I was one of my accounts, and he took me under his wing and he said, look, you don't need HR. He's a very bright man, but he said he had a very particular view about HR. So you don't need HR. You just need good managers. Okay, different view. Maybe wouldn't have scaled to the biggest potential companies, but hey, it was a different view.
So let me guess, that was a few years ago, right? Because I'm exactly the same.
It was a few years ago, but I don't get me wrong. I love the fella. I just thought it was brilliant, and we had a great relationship. But the point,
I totally feel like that. And with Natalia, we have super funny chats because she's. By the way, I don't think you're allowed to call it HR now. I think it's like human capital or whatever.
Was it? Oh,
but but the world changes, and it's. Well, you said a word that I love and that I use a lot. You say manager, and that's very interesting because one of the things I learned about myself way too late, is the difference between a leader and a manager. And a lot of founders meet are fantastic leader, not very good manager. And myself, I'm probably like, if you line up 1,000 random human being, I'll rank in the bottom 10 in management capability. I really suck at that. And I wish I knew that earlier. And that's a conversation. You're a good leader. Like when you're the guy on the horse with a big white plume and running with your sword and people follow you. That's not the same skill that the guy who say, okay, this phalanx is going to be 10 guys, this regiment is going to be 100. It's different skills. And managers are usually very bad leaders, and leaders tend to be very bad managers.
And I guess if you're looking back at mistakes you've made, not hiring the managers quick enough would be one of them.
Yes. And not hiring the right ones. And there is something that, people are going to hate me for saying that. You hire at the beginning based on friendship and loyalty. And you're right to do so. There's absolutely no question. And when I say to my founders, I always say, you have a brother you trust, you have a cousin you trust. That's super important. And these people who are your people, your family, who are fantastic people, not very soon, but at some point become a liability. Because at some point, and I used your cousin Mike, who does your accounting, poor cousin Mike is in all my conversation. Your cousin Mike, who does your accounting, that you trust with your life, is probably a very good accountant. Doesn't make him a CFO. Now you need a CFO, and it's not growing him into being a CFO. It's a set of skill, and you can extrapolate that to your CTO, to your head of operations, to your head of sales, to your head of marketing. And we go back to HR. HR is, I yet to see a good HR department in a small company. And actually, as much as us old white males think it's not important, Natalia managed to convince me it is actually very important to do.
We've had guests on, Alexis, and they've done a great job of countering that argument, but it's still pervasive. I'm just looking at another part of your website, and you've got something called the evolution of the Apex method, and it's empowering small businesses to build success. And you've got these four parts of the circle sort of thing. And it reminds me of football, actually, all those hydration breaks. But basically, first point, assess your company. Second, plan your exit, execute, and exit, or EEX it. So anyway, the point is, this is, oh, I suppose that's Apex, isn't it? So basically, the word Apex is we're talking about assess your company, plan your exit, execute, and exit. Can you just talk us through that?
Yeah, super simple. First of all, I have to give kudos to my youngest son of the first batch, because when I was writing the book, my publisher was nagging me, "Oh, you need a method, you need a name for the method," and I had this like assess your company, like pretty much know what you are, plan where you're going, do it, and then prepare for selling your company. And I was scratching my brain to find some kind of an acronym. And he looked at me and said, "Yeah, it's very simple. Assess, plan, execute, exit. You use the X, you have Apex, like an Apex predator." I say, "Oh, yeah, that's good." So super basic. Know your company and know yourself. This part is uber important. And again, goes back to the vision thing. What are you? First of all, what are you as a human being? What's your goal? First conversation I have. What's your goal? You are the age you have. Do you have kids? Do you have people who want to take over the company? What's your plan? And then usually people say, "Well, I wouldn't mind exiting." And I then come to the conversations, what's your number? And that's super, super interesting, because when you ask people, "What's your number?" I always intend in of the sentence, how much money do you need in your bank account to never work another day of your life if you choose to? Doesn't mean, "Oh, but I still will do something." Fine. But maybe your next job is not going to be decided by the salary or the revenue, but how interesting it is. And who knows, maybe you're going to want to go build hospitals in Africa because that's where you think you can contribute to the world. Or in my case, you're going to help founders. It's never going to make you tons of money, but that's where you contribute. So what's your number? And everybody come with a different number when there is basically one number. And that's what's interesting. It's the same number for everyone, but people don't realize it. So I go to the guys that say, "Oh, I'll be happy with $1 million in your bank account." Nobody, you won't. You'll be happy for a year, maybe two, and then you'll be broke. And you have the guy say, "Oh, I need 200 million." You can have 200 million, but it's more than what you actually need. So know your number. Are you a lifestyle business or are you a growth business? Completely different skill set, completely different set of decisions, both super valid. I have an immense respect for people who run lifestyle business, except I cannot help them because lifestyle business is all about operational excellency and tax optimization, which is two topics I literally suck at. So I cannot help that. And then that's where you go. Do you know your number? What's your unique selling proposal? What makes you different? Do your clients even like you? Do you know if your clients even like you? Can tell you the answer. It's no, you don't know. The reason you don't know is because you don't talk to your clients. Maybe you put out a survey to your client. How happy are you? "Oh, look, I have a 9.5 out of 10. No, buddy, you have nothing. Everybody puts a 10 in that. And the people who don't put a 10 in that put a 1 because they want to talk to you. So the results are useless. The only thing is it tells you the one that actually want to talk to you urgently. And all that stuff is on the assess part, right? Know your company. It's super basic stuff. Again, nothing in there is complicated. And then you have your plan. Now you have your number. You have where you are now. You know your company. You have your number. How long will it take to go to there? And I have a rule. If it takes more than 4 years, then I don't do it. I don't believe in 10-year plans. I believe the market and the world in general has too much of a sense of humor to let you execute a 10-year plan. And even your 4-year plan is going to change every 6 months because that's how it is. But at least you plan it. And when I say you plan it, is say, how do I grow? Is it organic growth? Am I gonna sell more of my stuff around me? am I gonna sell more of my stuff to a different geography? Am I gonna sell different stuff to my existing clients? So that's like common things that people don't really, there's too much trial and error going on in there. And then obviously come the M&A conversation. I always have people, well, when is the right time to do my first acquisition? And my answer is always last year. Like it's always earlier than you think because it's a fantastic way to grow. Right now, you basically have free money from the bank for any kind of LBO. They love LBO, so they will finance that super easily. So that's when you plan. Then you go basically and execute your plan and change your plan and then when you get at the tail end of it, you prepare the exit and that becomes super technical. Honestly, that's when you need somebody who knows how to do that. And it's a big phase that I call dressing the bride, which is how do you make your company sexy to a private equity, basically. I deal mainly with private equity because it's the universe I know and strategic exit are a little bit different. I do both, but I mainly work with private equity because I speak private equity. I talk to them. I still work from time to time for private equities. I hate doing that, but from time to time they send me to evaluate. I hate doing it, but the money is so indecent that I end up doing it anyway. I have to go to Italy to assess a Italian company for a big private equity, and they pay me like indecent amount of money. I'm like, okay, that I don't really want to do that, but it's a new pool for my house in Spain, so like it's hard to say no.
It's a John Lennon sort of, yeah, I'm going to write myself a swimming pool or something. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
it's
that kind of
exactly
idea.
that.
So, but yeah, good for you. Good for you. Well, Alexis, we've kind of got to the point where we've covered so many things. Kevin's usually got a brilliant question that he's kept to himself until now.
I think, Alexis, it's something that Graham and I have been battling with for podcast after podcast. We've got to a certain age, and the retirement question comes up. Graham says, "Oh, a couple of years' time, wife's going to be retired. I'm going to want to retire. I'm going to want to stop." And I'm saying, "What on earth do you want to stop for, Graham? You'll get bored." Now, you've sold your company. You took 3 years off, but you're back in the thick of it, doing stuff. What's your view on stopping, Alexis?
Um, I'm not back in the thick of it. I'm like super far from being in the thick of it. I'm actually in the thin of it. I work maybe what regular people will call full time, which is basically half time for a founder, and that's how far I'm going. So I'm far from being in the thick of it. Um, it's interesting where your motivation is not money. What's your motivation? And for me, it's actually very clear. And I'm sorry, it's gonna sound like super new agey bullshit, but it is what it is. I really get my joy from helping people. So that's what I do. I help people. I still charge for it most of the time. The reason I charge for it is because if people don't pay you, they don't listen to you.
Yeah.
I'm expensive, so when people say, "Oh, no, this guy cost me a lot of money, I better listen to it," it's like pretty much like a shrink, right? You pay your shrink because if you don't pay, you don't listen. But for me, my motivation is helping people, so I don't think I'm gonna ever stop that. Which form will it take? Will it be writing more books? I really enjoyed the the process of writing a book. Um, will it be the stuff I'm really good at, which is fireside chat in front of a group of very smart people and having conversation. I think I can do that in my 80s if I don't have more heart attacks. I think I'm always going to be helping people. But definitely no more full-time job. And it's interesting. And I had to actually face a proper decision on that. The company that I sold, I sold it to the private equity. Then the private equity sold it to a New Zealander company for high nine-figure numbers. And 6 months ago, the company went back on the market at a fifth of the price they bought it. Basically, they fucked it up. It happens, which, by the way, management matters. Not being cocky here, but it does. And I was like, okay, so maybe I should buy it back. So I pick up my phone and call a couple of my private equity friends and say, hey, you help me, we buy this company back. And I said, I know who's going to be CEO. I'm going to be chairman of the board and I'm going to advise them. And they said, no, 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 no. We absolutely do the deal, but you come back as CEO. And like three of them told me the exact, absolutely super deal. You come back as CEO. And I said, I don't want to come back as CEO. So then no deal. And that was like a proper, I have a conversation with my wife is, am I getting back to a 16-hour days, spending 4 days of the week in Geneva, flying, like answering the question, where do you live? And your answer is seat 2A. And like, going back to that life. And I really consciously decided to, no, I'm not going to do that actually. So
Good for
that's
you.
like, it's interesting because you have all these ideas like, oh, if somebody is hitting a girl in the subway, I'll interpose, I'll be a hero. But you never know until you actually face to that, like, oh, I'm never going to go back to being a CEO where it's fine because nobody is offering you anyway. So it's not a real decision you have to make. But like, I really had to make a proper decision. And that's like, now I know I really don't want to be a CEO because I could have and I decided not to.
That a decision that's going to cost potentially a lot of money um, is quite an important decision, and it's there's the sort of money on one side, but there's also your desire on the other, which was family, new wife, new way of working, helping other people. All of that weighs way more than some money, and all that goes with that. So yeah, you could have made even more money, but that's not. You've made the right decision, definitely, 100% from this few minutes that we've got to know you, Alexis, then basically that's probably the best decision that you've talked about so far.
Yeah,
Not
but
going back into the thick of it.
Graham, it's a Maslow thing, right? It's very easy to say that sitting there when you know you have a roof on your kid's head, their education in pay is paid. Like
Again,
when you get to that, like it's Maslow, right?
but it,
When basics are, when you have kids, as
yeah,
long as they're not guaranteed to have a roof on their head for the rest of their life, if something happens to you, then it's a very different conversation. When you get to that point, say, okay, if tomorrow I drop for a heart attack. I know my kids are good. My wife is good. It's a much easier decision when you're in that situation.
I notice in your styling and the way in which you express the apex thing, Maslow, the kind of triangular rising through the levels, that seems to come up a little bit, and I'm really quite impressed with that. It's very subtle. I might have been the only person to see it in the world, but anyway, that's just my view of that. But my view of you has been you've been an outstanding guest on the Next 100 Days podcast. Alexis, thank you for joining us.
I think the thing that comes out to me in that conversation, Graham, is that there was nothing complex that Alexis talks about. Everything was actually quite simple and quite obvious when you thought about it. But we all make the same simple, basic mistakes.
Mm, that's a really good observation. I've got to say, um, when you think about it, that's exactly it. And one of the things he did say is he hates administration, which, I get that as well. But at the end of the day, he doesn't really, you can't imagine him turning up to his clients with a PowerPoint or where, the last thing in the world he would do, but he would actually ask a few questions, which would get them a la you and me with guests. The preparation is kind of a little bit at the sort of surface level, but then you get into the conversation with the founder or whoever he's talking to, and that leads to the next part of the advice. But it's the ability to spot the things that at a really simple level, that seems to be one of his genius attributes. I don't know about you, Kevin. I was incredibly impressed with Alexis Sikorsky, and you can find out more about him at asikorsky.com. But for me, he has so much to give the world, and
Absolutely.
just his stories, his grandfather, and all that. So many different things that come into his life that's made his life, and the way in which he's worked with other people.
Yeah. So his idea of retirement, Graham, is not work 16-hour days anymore, just reduce it to the normal 8 hours.
Yeah, I know.
I can't see him spending all his time sitting around the swimming pool in his house in Spain, even though
Oh
he's
well, yeah,
find the work to pay for it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know what he's going to do with his next assignment. He's got the swimming pool now, so I mean, but maybe a bigger house. I don't know, whatever. But the end of the day, you will swallow it a little bit if somebody pays you an obscene amount of money. But that's the beauty of somebody like Alexis is that he's not tinkering around for small change that will alter his pathway. He'll do something under suffrage a little bit for a short period of time, but he's going to write a swimming pool. That makes huge amount of sense to me, and very very impressed with him. Very very impressed with him. And I think he's been a fantastic guest on the next 100 Days podcast.
Sounds like a book well worth reading as well.
Yeah, it does very much so. Well, today I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.